Hey, I'm Owen.
And I'm Suzana.
Suzana, this episode is really exciting to me.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we've talked about how making the comic in general feels like a time capsule to me sometimes.
Yeah.
Because when I look back at a page that we made, I can usually, especially if the page we made was made in peculiar circumstances, I can almost always remember where we were when we made it and what we were doing around it.
Yeah.
What was happening in our lives at the same time. So I really enjoyed that aspect of making comics together, that it kind of preserves our lives in a weird way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think this is kind of interesting as a practice, because this is a little bit of a time capsule in itself.
Yeah.
This is the first time that, now after talking with Galen last week, this is the first time that we've used 3D models to base sketch the comic.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And that feels cool because making these videos has now become a little bit of a time capsule for me.
Yeah.
So not only is making the comic in general a little bit of a time capsule, but this too feels like it's preserving... I know, exactly. It is exciting, huh? It's kind of preserving something that I think I'm really going to enjoy looking back on later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So this page, so about halfway through, so 1, 2, 3. So the first 3 panels were made our old style, the way that we usually make backgrounds.
Exactly the same way all the previous pages have been, where I've just been drawing in the perspective lines around like a very loose base sketch, which you can see up there. The first 3 panels follow that. And then the next 3 panels are my first attempts of using a 3D model that we've made.
Yeah.
Of the same space that's like in the next room.
Yeah. So I really want to talk about, there's a couple points I want to hit on today. I want to talk about how successful this experiment was, because it was really an experiment.
Yeah.
Toy has always felt very experimental.
Yeah, for sure.
It's our first comic, and it's our first major project that we've ever made long term.
Yeah.
So we try out a lot of new methods doing it. We try out a lot of new drawing styles and new programs, just to solve problems when it comes to how do we make this page. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always felt very much like trial and error, very like a learning process.
Yeah.
So this was a great opportunity to try this, right? So I want to talk about a couple things. I want to talk about how successful it was in a couple different ways, in terms of time saving, in terms of how easy it was to think about the background, right?
Yeah.
And I guess Scully's very excited today.
Yeah.
And then I guess I want to talk about ways to make it more successful in the future.
Yeah.
Right? So let's start with let's start with since this page in particular was the first 3 panels, we're not using it.
Yeah.
And then the 4th panel was the first time you used it.
Yeah.
This is the best time to ask.
Yeah.
How did it compare?
So it's a little bit of a learning curve still.
Sure.
It is my first time using it.
Yeah.
I would actually say that Scully's getting a lot of attention today.
I know.
I would say like the first 3 panels go very fast because I'm used to it.
Right.
But the last 3 panels, I feel like I'm able to understand the space a little bit better.
Okay.
And I don't have to think too hard about adding in materials that I couldn't see in my mind in that moment.
Okay.
So I usually have a very hard time visualizing. That's something I always struggle with.
Sure.
So I have to map out a room and think about it and feel it out to what feels right.
Right.
And so with perspective, I'll end up feeling out a room, and you'll see I judged this chair to be the right width. And then when I sketch the other chair, I'm like, no, the first one's the width seems wrong.
Okay.
So you'll even see, I believe here, I started adjusting the chair to be a little bit wider because I realized it wasn't the right width.
Sure.
And so you'll see me do that a lot.
Okay.
But when it comes to an already prefab little area, I already had a very good idea of how wide it should be.
Okay.
So in this case, we didn't have exact models for a lot of the things to what actually was in the room. We just got close enough. So like the bookshelf isn't tall enough, so I add an extra layer of height, which is perfect. That ends up working out.
Okay.
The bookshelf didn't have like books on it, but I know that there is books on it, so I can draw them in.
Right.
There's a portrait on it, which you can see, and that also shows up on there.
Yeah.
And I draw that in from memory. It's not part of the 3D model.
Sure.
But the monitor, it helps to have it in there because now I can see how big it should be.
Eli's computer monitor.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can see how big it should be. I can see where it's situated on the desk.
Right.
What makes sense. So as I change to a different angle, suddenly it's like I'm able to be aware of something that I wasn't able to think of in my 3D space in my head.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I found it to be really helpful for that. I liked it.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm really glad. So speaking of that, speaking of like the models weren't perfect, actually.
Yeah.
The first thing I realized as soon as I started because I built the 3D model, and in fact, I'm gonna include some screenshots of it on the Patreon.
Yeah.
I've already like kind of queued them up and they're ready to go for tonight, actually. But I think it's really interesting to look at them. I built them right after we talked with Galen, actually. Maybe like the next day.
Yeah.
And the first thing I realized as soon as I started building them was that this was going to be really difficult to build a space that already exists.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've seen Eli's office already in the comic. We've already been here. And as soon as you establish what things look like, barring, of course, that people can like remodel or they can change stuff out, of course they can. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be 100% consistent.
Yeah.
But to the extent that you don't want things to change, you want to maintain consistency because you want recognizability.
Yeah, you want it to also, like in the case of Eli, I don't imagine he would remodel his office.
Yes, I agree.
He's very old. His office has probably been the exact same for 25 years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Except for like little bits here and there. He's not the kind of person who does like to remodel. So I do like, again, talking of like backgrounds being characters, I do like the fact that his office wouldn't change much, and that speaks to him as a person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, and especially for me personally, I want the space to look as similar as possible to increase recognizability.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, hey, reader, it's been a long time since we've been here. As long as it looks almost identical, if it has like the same palette, if it has the same general layout, if it looks as similar as possible, then that's a little bit of shorthand for, you remember the last time we were here? Like, we don't have to explain it too much in exposition, right?
Yeah.
And that decreases the amount of writing that needs to happen to reiterate, I am at my father's office, or you know what I mean? So
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I feel like it ended up being very successful at doing that. It changed a few things. Like if you do refer to the previous pages where we were in this office, which I think was 2 chapters ago.
You know, it surprised me when I looked back. It was a chapter earlier than I thought it was. So I want to say it was chapter 17, but now I can't remember if it was 16 and I'm misremembering, or if it was...
Yeah, I think it was 17.
Okay.
But, I mean, I keep getting thrown off
Time is a construct, and it is...
Time is not real.
And it is all over the place lately. Yeah, when you refer back to them.
So, when you refer back to them, you'll notice, like, it's little things like the doorways were up higher.
Okay.
Because... originally, when I planned the room, I kind of thought of it as these, like, old-style industrial buildings where those doors are, like, oversized for the space because they added a door in something that was just a basic hallway before.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of adding a wall, they just added a door into that space.
Okay.
But in redoing this and having a model, I actually liked it better with the wall coming down.
Okay.
You put in doors that don't go all the way up, and I was like, actually, I prefer that.
You like that.
So, technically, there's a little bit of remodeling on the doors.
Sure, okay.
But... it doesn't matter.
Yeah, little things like that.
Space much.
It's kind of like a retcon in that way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's fine. And I think as long as it's like as recognizable as possible, it's definitely good for that. And I'm not so staunchly like conservative that it's like if it doesn't match, it's not good. Like I really don't care. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like once again, referring to The Office.
Okay.
So, in the U.S. office, you'll notice that they're in one building in the first season.
Yes.
And then they change to a different building entirely in the second season.
Yes.
But unless you look for little details, you would never know it.
Right.
But it does change, like little things like I think the windows in Michael's office changes.
Yes, yeah.
Some of the doors I think also change.
Yeah.
But it's like they're not real changes. You don't think about them. They don't matter. They're irrelevant.
Do you know what I learned last night?
Yeah.
Is so Michael's office usually is not a real window behind him. It's a window and then there's like a screen.
Oh.
So anytime you're in a scene where Michael has to physically look out the window and then see things happening outside, that's a different room than the office that Michael is usually filmed in. And the way that you can really tell, and speaking of consistency, the walls are painted a different color in his fake office that has a real window.
Yeah.
And so if you see it, like the walls are like way more green. I caught that on the Office Ladies podcast. They were talking about it and they were like, that doesn't even look the same. I literally never noticed.
I've never noticed it.
So in terms of like, so that's a show that also prides themselves on how close they match their consistency.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not 100% valuable to be like, let me slave over making sure this looks identical. Like, there's definitely things that have to wobble around, especially if it's like, but it looks better now anyway, so it might as well change. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as I can keep the same kind of consistency as they have in a lot of their rooms, I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think as long as it's recognizable, then it's successful. Honey. Scully is complaining very much.
He likes to join the conversations a lot.
So I think in terms of consistency, I think there's a lot of success with that. But yeah, so I did realize that it was going to be a lot more difficult to build spaces that already existed because to get a perfect match, which I don't super hold myself to, I don't care that much, but if I really were trying to get closer to a perfect match, I would then have to model all of the assets myself or use assets that were a little more detailed than I think probably would be necessary in the future.
Yeah, and especially like, I don't know, in this case, another one of the things is like Eli's chair.
Sure.
The model we got is like a very low set chair.
It looks nothing like it,
But like it gives me an idea of where the chair would be spaced.
How high up on the window it would be, like where compared to the desk it would have to sit, stuff like that. Yeah.
But like you'll see, like it's very easy to still go back to what I think of in a 3D space.
Sure.
So I do know, like, okay, he'd be roughly this size and the chair would be roughly this size behind him.
Well, it's good that you've had so much practice doing it the way that you always have, because then you can combine the two methods to pretty good effect. Yeah,
I think like, especially if you ever take like a class or something in something like this, they usually do try to have you do both.
Okay.
And then you can actually combine it and become more successful at it, like from being able to like process it differently. And I would definitely recommend that, because I think if you went into just 3D modeling and tried to just draw from that, you might end up struggling with understanding how the space would go on it. But then again, some people probably immediately would grasp it.
I would honestly love to take a class. I would love to take a couple classes.
Yeah. Everyone's brain works so differently that, like, honestly, some people hold 3D models so perfectly in their head that like, they don't even need any of this. But
sure.
It helps. Yeah. It's nice to be able to have for you to be able to sketch a little bit faster.
I would like that. I would like to do that personally. Yeah. So that's what I realized. And then, so I decided to do Eli's office first, and before then starting in on another project that I really wanted to focus on. Yeah. A new project that we want to get off the ground that I really want to build reference folders for. I think we were talking about this with Galen too. That I want to prep some reference folders before we dive into it to make the process go faster. Right. So it was a really interesting experiment to start with a space that had already existed in a comic to kind of get an understanding of how detailed does this model actually need to be. Less detailed might be better, and then you can add into it yourself. It's really just more for holding the space in your head, like if you don't forget, like if you wanted the monitor is visible from the same that kind of thing. And then also it was good learning experience for not building the model too big. So then it becomes too unwieldy to actually get, because I don't have very much experience with Blender. I don't quite know yet how to optimize it perfectly. So for now it might be a little bit learning how to build simply before I get too big into how to, if I want to build more complicated stuff, how then to get that down to a more simple model. So
that makes a lot of sense. I think because I'm privy to actually seeing the models you've done so far. I think you've done a pretty good job of maintaining some kind of simplicity that I would be able to draw out really quickly.
Sure.
But then, because the 3D space is already built up, it would make it easier for you to know where to color it down the line.
Okay.
And I think, like, that level of simplicity is all you really need.
Okay, fair enough.
When you import it into Clip Studio, and you can kind of see it from the little model images that pop up on the screen when I was doing the sketch.
Yeah, I would say in the first, like, 10 minutes of this video, you can definitely see it more. Maybe even the first, like, 7 minutes.
Yeah. When you see those, you'll see that they're black and white.
Yes.
So when I ported it into Clip Studio, all color value, everything was lost. It was just like complete gray slate, and I had to move the lighting around to be able to like get
see stuff. Yeah. Well, I do know that there's also a setting in Clip that you can turn on lines.
Yeah.
So we'll have to play with that too.
Yeah.
Because that might help too.
It definitely, I think, would be a huge help. And we are new to this, so it's going to be a lot of learning, and you guys get to be privy to that.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm really excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see, because now I've seen you use it on 2 pages. I'm really excited to see you use it on 10 pages.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, I'm excited to see, I've seen what the first instances of you using it look like.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like once you've done 10 or 20 pages with it.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to my first point. The first thing I wanted to ask you about how successful of an experiment it is. How fast was this compared to what you do usually? And strictly in terms of work time.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a little difficult because it is something I'm still learning.
Right.
So for this experiment, it did take a little bit longer.
Okay.
But it wasn't benefited by the fact that there is a background in every panel.
Sure. So,
and that includes the ones that I had to build by myself.
Right. So that is pages that have multiple backgrounds, especially one in every panel, are difficult to compare to the last couple pages we just did.
Yes.
Where some of the panels within the pages don't have backgrounds.
Yeah.
So obviously, if there's no background, the panel's going to go faster, and then the whole page goes faster.
Yeah.
The more backgrounds per page, easily the page can get up to, for us, just based on our workload, and the way that we work, probably I would say 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah, easily.
If there's a background in every page. How long did this one take us? Would you estimate?
Probably 10 to 12. I actually can't really...
Comparable to what it would usually take us.
Yeah.
Because you were fiddling with it the whole time? Like you were trying to make it work and trying to learn how to get it to work?
Yeah, so I had to... at one point I had to have you pause, and I had to remake one of the models for, I think, the 4th panel, because I had accidentally warped the room when I had moved it around.
Right.
And I didn't realize until I went to sketch it that, oh, this was a problem.
Sure.
This is the right way to have done it.
Yeah.
So I had you pause it for a moment while I went in, and I had to, like, move the model around, which...
Right.
It was a really big file, so it takes a little bit to maneuver it in there.
Yeah.
And then once I figured out how I had accidentally, like, fisheyed the lens and everything...
Yeah.
I was able to actually get a better screenshot, imported it back in, and was able to draw from there.
Okay.
So, like, it added a little bit of time, and it added a little bit of confusion on my part.
Sure.
To not understand, like, why does this room not make any sense suddenly?
Yeah.
But that's a really small thing that now that I have the experience of what I did, I can look out for it next time.
Right. So I taking that, shaving that off the experience. Let's shave off every moment where you were trying to get the program to work or trying to learn a new user interface for a part of the program that you don't often use before, right?
Yeah.
So let's shave off every moment that you were trying to learn how to use it. In terms of sheer, once the screenshot of your model was already in place, once you're doing your base sketch on top of it, if you could just, because it's obviously hard to quantify, if you could guess, what was it, how was it successful in terms of time saved?
I would say I can see how it will be very successful.
Okay.
I can see how now that I have like a model behind it, I probably can avoid some steps in my sketching process that would be superfluous to the moment.
Oh, interesting.
So like some of the walls wouldn't really need to have much detailing.
Okay.
when I go in and have to do it raw without the base at all.
Sure.
I end up having to feel out the wall a lot.
Okay.
Because, like I said, most of what I grasp of perspective is based on feeling.
Sure.
If it feels right, then I do that.
Right.
But sometimes that ends up being very incorrect because your brain obviously does not feel it correctly.
Sure.
It's kind of based more on math, but feeling isn't a math. You can't feel a math answer, right?
So I will say that when we first sat down to make this model, Eli's office, you laugh because you know what I'm going to say. You gave me a sketch of the floor plan.
Yeah. And
the floor plan is fine.
Yeah, I was able to do it in literally, I think I had it sketched in 1 minute.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, from here, okay, now I have to figure out the sizing.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, I have no idea what to base this on.
Right.
So I immediately went to base it on Eli's desk.
Right.
Because that was the first thing that made sense.
So then you say, well, it makes sense to me that this desk would be maybe 1/3 of this room's width.
Yeah.
So then if the desk is 5 feet, then his room is 15 feet?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then the next wall looks bigger, so that's 20 feet?
I think the actually really embarrassing thing was that I was the opposite direction.
Sure.
I think I went less. And when I had you build the room, what you built was way too small.
It was too small.
And it was just this huge desk that was in the middle of this room that was I think I said 11 feet wide. And it should have been a little bit wider.
Sure. Yeah, it was an interesting learning experience for me because the program that we used, it's Sweet Home 3D.
Yeah.
I opened it up and I was like, okay, I have the sketch of the floor plan.
This is gonna be easy.
I can just drag a box here and that's the room size. I don't know what size to make it. And I just really, truly... So if I were going based on a real floor plan, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah.
Had I been making a new room entirely from scratch, that would have been easy too. You know what I mean? So doing the math on that was very complicated.
Yeah.
And was not immediately successful. But
yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how off I was on that. But it's it's because I don't hold numbers in my head very well. And
neither do I.
Especially when it comes to something as simple as I go based on feet, not meters.
Right.
So it's when I say this many feet, to me, I don't really actually have a good grasp of how long a foot is.
Right, yeah.
I just know roughly I could put my hands out to a distance and I'm like, oh, that's
about a foot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about a foot, but it's I'm probably holding my hands out to about 14 inches.
Right, yeah. And it's and it would kind of be this different. It would be a different length every time you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that's the difference of I don't know, probably 6 centimeters. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
It's significant. I have very poor grasp of actual numbers.
Sure.
That was always my weak spot in math.
Yeah. I mean, every spot was my weak spot in math.
The second a number came up, it's darn it.
I can't think. My brain is tired. I can't do it. Damn.
Can I just pick the colors?
Can
instead?
I have to leave. I'm hungry or something. Can I?
I have a cramp in my leg. I can't do math today.
I can't do it. I have to go home. I'm sick. So yeah. I know exactly what you mean. So having the model kind of it took away having to feel the space out.
Yeah, and that's definitely to the benefit because even as I look at the old pages, and it's I'm still I'm still proud of everything we've done in the comic. There's not anything that I'm I really regret that. But I'll look back at it sometimes and I'm now I can actually see the space a little bit better. And as I'm looking at this page, I really didn't understand it in this panel.
Sure,
I felt it out wrong.
I think that there's something to be said for it doesn't when you look back on old pages, especially when it's okay, these are done. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whatever, another page under the bridge. Yeah. You know what I mean? Another page to step on, another stepping stone, and you move forward, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can go back to literally the first chapters with the worst part of the progression of art. Literally the oldest, the least educated, the least informed art that exists, and still be damn, that's part of the chain. It's the first rung on the ladder. Yeah. That's what holds the rest of the ladder up. Yeah. The second step doesn't exist without the first. Yeah. And every single step like that, it's you can go back and you can be oh, cringy, my old art. Or you can be damn, that's part of my history.
Yeah.
That's part of my art history.
Yeah, at least you did it.
That's done.
That's what is actually more important.
Yeah.
Just do it, and like, yeah, eventually you're going to feel different about everything you make.
Yeah.
That's inevitable.
That's inevitable, but that's like, a good thing.
It's a good thing because it means that you're still growing.
There's a I don't know if you'd call it a meme. There's like an image that I see get passed around a lot, and every time I see it, I pin it and I save it, and I really enjoy it. It's the it's like the art growth progression helix, right? So it's shaped like DNA. It's that the double helix, and it's like as you improve at art, you improve in two different ways, and they cross over each other, overlap, and then one gets better as the other doesn't, right? Yeah. So it's the first way you improve at art is through physical growth, right? Your physical ability to move your hand and to create art that is then you like it, right? Yeah. Your muscle memory, your ability to replicate shapes, your ability to replicate perspective.
Yeah.
You move your hand and you make something that then that ability to do that increases, right? Like you get better at the physical act of drawing. Yeah. And then the other half of the helix that comes up when one takes a break, the other one improves, is your ability to critique, right? Your ability to criticize yourself, or your ability to criticize and look at art and say like, oh, this is how it gets better, right? So you can look back on your old art and you can say, oh, I see here my perspective was way off. Yeah. I did not demonstrate perspective correctly when I drew this. Yeah. It was too crunched. I didn't notice it at the time, but now I've mentally improved and I can look back on it and see, wow, okay, I've made understanding steps since then that have led me to now see how I would even fix this and how I would do it better the next time I did it. And the two take turns improving. So that's why sometimes you feel like, you go through an art slump, is like, you're getting better at criticizing yourself, critiquing yourself. You're improving at being able to understand what you did wrong. Yeah. And so for a while, all your art looks like crap to yourself. You hate it, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I can see all the flaws in it now. Yeah. But that's an improvement too. And then as it upswings, your physical ability starts to catch up to it, and it starts to better create it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I always think of that, and I really like it a lot. Yeah, it's definitely a really good analogy for it, because I feel as though, like, I've witnessed everyone be able to go through that, too. Yeah. And especially, like, that's usually exactly what an art slump is. Yeah. Usually it's just, like, it's not even that you're being too critical, it's that your brain is critical to a point of, like, wanting to improve, but it can't figure out how to do it yet. Right. Your physical ability has to catch up. Yeah. But it's still improvement. Yeah. You're still getting better actively. Yeah. It's not even like, oh, you're temporarily bad. Yeah. It's all up. Yeah. It's all an upward climb. Yeah. And you're mentally improving. You're getting better right this second. Yeah. As you see your old art and you're like, I don't like that. Yeah. That's you getting better at seeing. Yeah. So I just think that's super cool. Yeah. So that's how I feel now. I've really internalized that. Do you know what I mean? I've really pounded that lesson into my brain. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel now looking back at the old pages, where it's like, even the writing. Do you know what I mean? If I go back and I see, like, I really hate the writing in this chapter or whatever, and it's like, that's cool that I can see that and say, like, oh, that's what I didn't like about it. Yeah. Oh, I can kind of think about what I would do differently if given the chance now. It's fine. Yeah. It's a stepping stone a mile back. Yeah, it's exactly. A rung on the ladder that I climbed way long ago. It's fine. It got me where I am now. Whatever, it's done. Yeah. Move forward. You know what I mean? It's just part of the story now. Yeah. And you build on it and you keep going. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely feel like all art has that kind of, like, growth. I agree. I definitely agree. So that's in terms of time saving. Yeah. So I think the general consensus right now is it wasn't faster yet. Not yet. But you see the potential in it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think also, even as I was just looking at this page again, I didn't remember that there's also multiple panels where you do pull out and see people standing position. You see their feet. You see them, like,
in that space.
Oh, okay.
And that does take a little bit of extra time. Because,
yeah.
I don't know if you caught on the second panel there, I had to sketch like a base skeleton of Liam sitting.
Yeah.
And then make him stand, and then be able to base that perspective to be able to see how tall those men were and how tall the door frame should be.
Oh, interesting.
That's me feeling out the space again.
Right.
Because even then, like, I had to do a little adjustments, because once I adjusted for that, I was like, I actually have to adjust Liam's legs in the chair.
Right.
Because, like, while it still looked correct, once I adjusted for having drawn out the perspective on it,
right.
his legs needed to be a little longer. And so did Matt's, because Matt was sitting next to him.
Right.
I had also drawn him at the same angle. So
stuff like that is the barrier for entry for me to make comics myself, personally. So let me just say thank you for illustrating this comic for me. I really appreciate it.
Well, honestly, I wouldn't know it now if I hadn't
done it
been
before.
practicing it for so long.
Suzana, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that as I'm thanking you. Thank you for making the comic. Please continue to only be the one that does it. No, I'm just kidding.
I say it for everyone
I
who
know.
wants to get into drawing, because, like, you will hate what you do in little parts, and you will see that you didn't do it right later.
It's true.
And I'll look back at old panels and be like, oh god, that angle.
I mean, we feel that way about pages that we made, like, this chapter.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
oh
god, I must have been tired that day.
Yeah.
That is not correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, sometimes it's not even like that you're tired. It's just like your brain did not process that correctly.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the work's done and it's out there. I guess I could correct it for the book. And I have done that.
Sure. Yeah,
like, I've corrected a panel when it's like,
sure.
oh, that was really off. But
yeah,
sometimes you just don't catch it until much later. And it's like, whatever.
Well, it's done.
That's part of it.
It's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the process, and it's a beautiful facet of it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. And again, it's a time capsule.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love the preservation of things like that, because I like to think I have a pretty good memory, but I really like tangible evidence that kind of like points to, look at that moment. Even like little moments where you make mistakes, and even moments where you fail a little bit. It's kind of like, look at that though.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I do remember I was tired that day. And you know why I was tired is because the night before we had that really cool party.
Yeah.
And it's like that, I was so tired coming in. I really could not get my brain to work. But do you remember that fun time we had that time?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or it's like, or I think we talked a little bit before about some pages that we made when we were on the road.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, we were under duress making pages in the hotel. But do you remember like that day we had, like I don't know, somewhere along, like in our road trip or something?
Yeah.
Do you remember like what we did that day?
Yeah.
When we came home and we made that page, but do you remember during the day what happened? That's so, you know what I mean? So
little
I really
things like that.
I love the preservation. I really do.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
I definitely notice, like, in that same way, like, the days that we have, like, a really good day, sometimes, like, I'll come home and I'll be so, like, jazzed that, like, drawing something's a little bit easier.
Sure.
And it's like, I don't know, like, I guess having, like, seen some nature in a day has made me suddenly want to draw a tree.
Sure.
Like, so I draw plant really good when I saw a tree today.
I saw a tree today. So, I totally agree. Yeah, that's a really, I just love it. I love that, like, physical forever preservation that I can then look back on and be like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
Good
really
times.
cool. It is cool. I like making comics.
Yeah.
For so many reasons.
Me too. You want to make more?
Yes, I would love to make more.
Oh, we already have a few in the works, so
I know.
Gear up.
I know. I mean, that's why I'm doing the models.
That's
so,
true.
okay, so now, so we've talked a little bit about time saving. Not yet, but probably will.
Yeah.
How do you feel about how it improved the quality of the backgrounds?
I think that's tenfold, personally.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like I said, there's a lot of little things that I wasn't able to really think about.
Sure.
And there's a lot of spaces that I wasn't able to really preserve in my own thoughts.
Sure.
Specifically, like desk sizes kind of fall out of my head because
sure,
I overestimate or underestimate a lot when I depend on my brain for it.
Sure.
You'll notice even the last time that we were in Eli's office, the length of his desk shifts a little bit, but it's because in my brain, for some reason, I thought you should be able to see that side of the desk.
Right.
But when I look back on it now, it's just like, that desk is like weirdly short in this panel.
I think it also doesn't help sometimes because I'll thumbnail something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll just thumbnail without really even thinking about the space. I want Liam and Eli to both be in profile looking at each other.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you a certain size panel
Yeah.
to do that in. And then it's like, well,
and then I guess the desk should end here, so that way, and it's like, no, you should still be able to see the desk. It's just, it's a very long desk.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But I don't think of it that way.
Sure.
My brain doesn't really preserve it.
Sure.
So, I mean, it helped for that. I was able to actually understand how far away, even in this panel right now where I'm drawing Liam, how far away the door behind him should be.
Right. To it's like the storage room that has now become Matt's office.
Yeah. Or like even Liam's height, which I adjusted a couple times for the space.
Sure.
Like being able to actually understand the space and sizing now, I was able to figure out how tall he should be more easily. Yeah. And then the bookshelf, like I said, the bookshelf here in the model was one rung shorter.
Yeah, I just kind of found a bookshelf and threw it in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fine. I was able to just draw another rung higher, and then I could feel out the space for like one extra shelf on the layer. But, it ended up being better sizing for me to know how close it should be to the door.
Sure.
So that ended up being perfect for that.
I love that.
Yeah, it was actually very helpful. I do appreciate that.
Cool. So. I'm really happy.
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad. I'm definitely excited to do it more for new spaces.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about how I started.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And it's I think it'll be really interesting for me thumbnailing now too, right? Because as I just said, sometimes I will thumbnail something and I won't give it any thought whatsoever about what it's going to look like, you know what I mean? And I am a little selfish in that, I will say. I'll admit that. That I'll just say, I want this, and I don't try to think about it in 3D space, and I just kind of give it to you to make it work. Do you know what I mean? I think having at least a basis for a 3D space to be able to visualize, because I'm very not good at visualizing. Especially spaces that don't actually exist or that I haven't been to. I think it'll be an interesting tool to have, so that then when I go to thumbnail and I say this panel it's facing this direction, this panel we pivot this way. It'll give me a literal tangible visual that I can say, so when you go to make this panel, by the way, you should note that this potted plant is right here, and you know that that's in the background, or and it'll kind of inform my thumbnails more too, and I think in a fuller way. That will make me more thoughtful.
It's it improves your ability to be a director.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I will say it has kind of felt like building a set.
It very much is.
Yeah, and it's very like now I said already, I'm not the best at optimizing. I need to learn a lot about how to optimize the model. And I think once I'm better at it, I can get it down to being a simpler model with, less vertices or whatever, and I can get it down. But also I can figure out better how to group objects together so that they can kind of be turned on and off together. So if you need to have like an aerial shot of a room and you kind of need to be further back than the wall would allow for you to be, then I know to take the east wall off. And also everything that's on the east wall should come off with it. Do you know what I mean? So
for sure.
I need to still learn how to do that. I've taken it into Blender and I've kind of played with it a little bit, but I think we were talking to Galen about this too. The UI is so new to me. I don't even know where that is. Do you know what I mean? The group objects together and how to select them correctly, because at this point you're selecting like all the faces of each object. So if you put like a vase in and you go to, in my understanding, you go to just drag a select box around it, and it selects the thing that is within that box, right? But then I've come to find out that when you do that in Blender, it selects all the faces of the vase that are closest to you. Do you know what I mean? So there's a whole...
so like when it's something that's rounded like that, you have multiple sides to it.
But even when it's not rounded, like if you select a picture frame, there's a back to the picture frame. Even if it has 1 inch of depth, there still is a face to that object that you can't see that doesn't get selected in that. And I'm sure that Blender has obviously thought of this and has done something to make it more easy and more possible, but I don't know how to do it.
Well, I'm sure there's probably some really good videos on YouTube specifically for that.
That's what I need to do. That's my next step. You know what I mean? So
it's time to take a class through YouTube U.
Yeah, hell yeah. But I mean, there are online classes for that too that I obviously, like, I would be benefited by too, and I might actually look into that too.
Yeah.
But so I know that there is a way to do it, and I know that it's knowledge that I must gain in going forward, right? And I think that once I get there, it's going to be very, it'll be very helpful, right?
Yeah.
And once it's successful, once I'm able to do these things using this program, then I will be able to say, take the east wall off. All the objects on the east wall can come right off. There you go, Suzana. You know, this scene is, at least this panel right here is facing the west wall.
Yeah.
So if you need to back up, you can back all the way up. Your camera, you know what I mean, won't be interrupted by, you have like a potted plant in front of you.
Yeah.
That's off. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it does in that way feel kind of like a movie set.
Yeah.
And it's, I think that once it's all off the ground, it's going to be pretty helpful.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Maybe also not just in terms of feeling out the space, but just, I don't know, being able to plan it.
Yeah.
Being able to have that planning as part of the construction.
Yeah.
I think it'll make me a more thoughtful writer. Which overall I'm just very, I think it's a fascinating practice so far. It's been a very fascinating experiment overall.
Yeah, for sure. I think though, the other benefit too, since you're the one building the models.
Sure.
That'll actually give me a better idea of what you're going for, because usually when we build spaces before now, you'll tell me roughly what you want, and then I go through and visualize and build
I have to find it. Yeah.
But yeah, then usually it's not always based 100% on a real place.
Right.
It's kind of just like a room that I have to fill in my head and can add some occasional things.
Right.
Like the Easter egg of the photo on the bookshelf.
Sure.
Or the books themselves on the bookshelf.
Sure.
And when I think of those spaces, my brain is never going to be able to fill it out to have all these little objects.
Sure.
I never even thought about putting a plant in Eli's office.
Sure. Or what really struck me was putting a phone on his desk.
Yeah. I
Do you know what I mean?
Think about it.
Yeah.
I will say, in the previous time that we've been in his office, he should have had a phone on his desk.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about it either.
When was the last time I even saw a phone? What is a phone?
Like a desk phone, like a corded phone. Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, obviously he would have that.
Every lawyer does.
Yeah, every business really does.
Sure.
So it makes no sense that there's not a phone on his desk, but I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So now, canonly, he just put his phone on the floor. He moved his phone to the floor, and I don't know. Maybe he tripped over it when he got up later that day.
Yeah.
So that's a little image now that's going to be in my head.
I love it. But it's so true that, like, you go to fill out the space, and it's like, you might even forget what the space needs.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that, like, their apartment is going to need, like, a fridge and a counter and in the hood for the top of the stove.
Yeah.
But, like, you may forget, I don't, like, little things. Yeah. Like, some of them are not important, because there is also, you have to strike a balance between over detailing your backgrounds, because you run the risk of, if your background is too detailed, it's really going to pull focus.
Yeah.
Your character's not going to stand out from it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to think harder about value. And, you know, you can definitely go overboard, put too much details.
Oh, yeah,
but
for sure.
There are some things that really just fill the space well.
Yeah. And
look good for having been there.
Yeah.
That you don't really think about until you're like, I have a whole wall here that's just empty.
Yeah.
What else goes in room?
What do people put in their rooms? And it's like, a phone? What?
Oh, yeah. A filing cabinet, maybe? Oh. Well, now, if we ever pan that way, that could be there.
In that space.
That's interesting. Okay, well, that's good to know. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. It's been very interesting overall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's been a fun learning experience, but it's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of just having
exhausting.
to process it.
Yeah. The processing itself is a little exhausting.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. You have the next page base sketched.
It's not base sketched yet, is it?
I think it is.
Oh, I think you're right.
Isn't that a nice gift for yourself to now remember that? Is that like finding like $20 in your laundry?
Yeah, it sure is. Oh my god, I forgot about that. Where did this week go?
I know.
Yeah, so yes, you're right. It is base sketched. And the next few pages I already overlaid this background preview.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I haven't touched the base sketch on any other page yet except for the next page.
Mm-hmm.
But I did go ahead and like take screenshots of the background, move to the positions I want for each panel.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing that, I even found that I kind of liked the way some angles looked differently than the thumbnail.
Oh.
So I put a couple different options that when we get to that, you'll see I'm going to probably have to switch between them, decide what I like for the actual spacing.
Cool.
And that'll be fun.
I really like that.
Yeah, and I think like some of that's going to change how the words are going to be laid out.
Yes.
And so we'll be able to even look at that when I'm handing it back to you for words that maybe you'll have preferred a different angle. Or... So
I will say that that's right now. In terms of, like, I feel very optimistic about this.
Oh, yeah.
I feel really optimistic about the entire process.
Yeah.
I see the good in it, and I see how it's a really helpful and powerful tool.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that that's the only thing I don't feel optimistic about yet, is I felt like we'd come to a point where word spacing, not competing for art space, had become part of the process that I felt really good and confident about.
Yeah.
And so now I know that this is going to kind of throw a wrench in that, which is okay, because now it's a learning curve and we get better, you know what I mean? And we'll tackle it. And as with all things that don't come out good at first, we will improve and it'll get better.
Yeah.
But I will say that that is the thing that gave me the most stress from this, is like the way that we feel out where the word bubbles go is going to have to entirely change, and I'm not confident about that yet.
Yeah, so I think we're going to probably have to touch in on word bubbles sooner, especially now that I have backgrounds in.
Okay, so move them up in the process.
Yeah, I probably will just do like the most basic skeleton and then do a base sketch from there. But I'll give you the basic skeleton so you can see this is where in the room I'm planning on putting them. Then you can put the word bubbles. And if the word bubbles overlap to where I wanted to put them, I didn't do a base sketch that I now have to change.
Right.
I only have a skeleton in one screenshot.
Right.
I can go change the screenshot, change it around, and see if I like the skeleton to be in a different place.
Okay.
And then base sketch from there.
So let me explain what we do now.
Yeah.
In terms of then how this is going to be different, right? So what we do now is Suzana does a base sketch. It is it usually at this point you can see it's the very, very beginning of this video. It's in black. Before the second sketch is in red, and I put like a little text indicator at the bottom. The base sketch has the hint of a background, but there's no perspective applied to it. So it's literally just like, just doing a really, really rough drawing of like vaguely there's a door here. There's a chair here. Plant vaguely here, whatever. And then from there, she gives me the base sketch. I take it and I put the words on it. Usually there is an adjustment period after that, once I've put the words on, where Suzana will sometimes completely resize the base sketch to make sure that there's ample room for the word bubble that I put on. She will move background elements around. Or the characters. In order to make sure that no character is overlapped by their own word bubble. That if there is something in the background that's going to get cut off by the word bubble, that there's not like super confusing tangent lines about it. That if the word bubble is really big, that we know not to focus too much on putting too much detail in that part of the background. Just to get a sense for like, here are the words, work around them, right? And, sometimes the words change between the very beginning of the page and the very end. But for the most part, the bubble will stay the same. And it's a good size indicator. And then it's not until Suzana's then fixed the base sketch to make room for the bubbles that she even bothers with the second sketch, right? So and
the second sketch is the more detailed sketch.
It is the more detailed sketch that you ink from. And it's where you lay down your perspective so that it's actually existent. And where you make your facial expressions, you make your, this is, the hand needs to have this much anatomical correctness, the bodies need to have this much anatomical correctness.
That's also where I add in like props.
Right.
Usually. That's also the sketches that you've been putting on Patreon.
Yes.
Is the ones that I did that are in red.
Yes.
And have you left them in red, or did you put them in black?
I think they're in red.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in red.
So yeah, they're still in red, which is how I draw from it.
Yeah.
So you can see exactly what I use as the base for all the drawings.
When you go to ink.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's our current process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a very vague base sketch, word bubbles on top of it, base sketch gets moved around, then the sketch gets done on top of the base sketch once it's solid, right? Which then makes it readable. Once it's in sketch phase, if you were to turn the word bubbles on, it's a readable, you can see where all the art's going to go around the bubbles.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now that I've said that, let me try to understand what you mean about how you want to change the process, right? So you're saying do a base sketch, but make it even simpler.
Yeah, I'm probably not even going to do a base sketch.
By our current definition of it. Okay.
I'm probably going to port in a screenshot of where in the office you're looking.
Okay.
I'll draw like a vague shape of the head and maybe the shoulders so you see where the character's sitting.
Okay.
And then you can put the word bubbles around them. And if the word bubbles crowd into that space, I can shrink the background down a little bit and make the character fit in the panel better.
So, okay, I see what you're saying, but let me throw out a spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. No, it's not even a it's let me suggest something, and we'll see if this is a better idea. Okay. What if so up until this point I've been doing thumbnails on paper.
Okay.
And I have like a little sketchbook that I do my thumbnails in. And I do them mostly stick figures, varying little bits more of sketched detail as I feel like I need it to communicate my point.
Okay.
But what if instead of doing the thumbnails on paper, I can do them on paper too, but what if I add to them once I've done them on paper? What if I do the thumbnails the exact same way I've been doing them, but digitally directly onto the page? So let's say we've set the page up, because setting the page up for the panel width and stuff is its own process that's kind of completely separate of all the art itself. If I have the panel layout, total black and white, total just the boxes, right? If I draw my thumbnail onto the page, is that helpful? Is that a helpful first step?
I don't know if it would be, only because when you do like a quick sketch in there, it'll be in your style.
Yeah.
And your style is so drastically
differently proportioned. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I go to draw a character in a room, my shoulders are much narrower and like fit into like a space.
Yes.
Much differently.
That is true.
So when I try to fit my characters over top of your base sketches, because we've done that before. When I tried to fit the characters in my art style over top of your base sketch, I ended up having to resize them, because then it's like you're seeing way too much of the torso. I need to
that makes sense. Yeah.
Or more of their body is visible than was intended, so I need to like make it closer up.
Okay.
It just makes it a little bit like, because my brain can't really hold it as easily that way.
Yeah.
But if I see the base on something else, I can transfer it into that pretty easily.
I was wondering if it would be helpful, but I also am not interested in doing something that would hinder it at all. So
I don't know that it would hinder it. I just feel as though it would be harder for me to translate it. It
would be one more step of translation that probably isn't necessary. Yeah.
But I feel like on paper it's been perfectly good.
Yeah.
Because I do exactly understand what you're going for.
Right.
And I can work with it from there. Versus when it's on the canvas, for some reason my brain gets tricked into thinking that it has to
treat it like a sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you then must ink or draw over in some way.
And so then it's just like, it's not going to end up looking right, because my brain has now decided like, nope, you're not doing it right unless you just follow this exactly.
I think we did learn that before when I was like, do you want me to do thumbnails digitally? Not only is it kind of more difficult for me to do them digitally, I kind of think easier on paper.
Yeah.
But I was like, would it be better? And you were like, oh, well, let's try it. Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's even as far back as chapter 1 we did that.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
I'm pretty sure a lot of chapter 1 had been base sketched by you, and then I sketched over top of it.
I think I tried it again. I don't know, like chapter like
else,
7 or so. I don't even remember when it was. Yeah. But at some point I was like, do you want me to try this? And it just didn't end up working out. And sometimes it takes me a little while to like look back on it and be like, why didn't that work? Should I try it again? But I think you're right that it's when I give you the written suggestion of how I want it to look, you then do a better job of creating the visual when you set out from basically what is scratch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because then also, like, I can be like, oh, when you drew them in this room, they're actually not standing in those places. But then I can shift it to make them stand in, like, kind of where you wanted, but then that'll make more sense for the space. Right. And it's like, it just makes it a little bit faster. Right. Whereas, like, if you were working from, like, literally the thumbnails that you had in there, sometimes the word bubbles would have been placed a lot differently than, like, later on I'm going to have to be like, no, sorry, like, they literally can't be in that space. Right. Like, that will teleport someone across the room. Yeah. It would be like when you're in a video game and you just watch a character suddenly appear. Yeah. It's like, oh. Whoops. It just throws off the placement of them. Yeah. And, like, that's not anything more than just, like, trying to get it down really quick. Sure. But, like, that's easy enough for skipping that step and just having me do the base. Fair enough. Okay, so that's good. That I enjoy thinking it through as it problem solving it out loud. I think, and this is why I even promote trying things again, anyways. Sure. I think sometimes revisiting something can reaffirm what was good or bad about it. Right. And sometimes you'll learn something. Yes. It's just we definitely did try that recently enough that I do remember exactly why it didn't work. You're right. That's totally fair. So, okay, so a more skeletal base sketch, a very, very bare bones base sketch. Yeah. Then the word bubbles. Yeah. Then a screenshot of the model, and then a base sketch on top of that. Yeah, probably. Okay. All right. So I'll let you thumbnail, and then I'll give you the base with the screenshots. Sounds good. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Nailed it. Yeah, nailed it. I'd high five you, but it'd be very loud. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm excited to see. You know, we have a couple pages now laid out. I'm really excited to see each one. Yeah. How it changes from here. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just, I like new experimental stuff like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it always feels good when it's like in toy. Yeah. So, and then I get to like put it into other stuff later. But, I really like these big innovative pushes that we do sometimes. I don't know, I'm just, I get like a renewed vigor for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh, I'm so excited to see. And it's, again, we've talked about this a little bit, but this is a really important scene to me. Yeah. We're building into something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. Yeah. This is finally where we're actually getting to the thing that we've been hinting at. Yeah. And, like, obviously it's not this page, but you see where it's coming now. Yeah. And, like, you'll see the pieces that we're even, like, laying down right now for this. Yeah. So, I'm really excited about that. Yeah, so I feel like it just feels really cool to me. It feels really fun and cool. Yeah. That we're trying something that is technically fun. It's fun about the technical part of the process. Yeah. And then also on a scene that means a lot to me otherwise. So I don't know, I'm just really excited and I think I'm really going to enjoy looking back on this later. So I think it's cool that we're making these. So I agree. Thank you for sitting down and talking to me about this. Yeah. I've learned a lot. Had a lot of fun. Yeah. And thank you also if you're listening and you've listened to this whole thing. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you.